What if I told you one of Japan's rarest pickups was smaller than a vending machine and somehow twice as useful? It wasn't just tiny, it was optimistic, absurd, and somehow still managed to function as a truck. Meet the Cony Guppy, a 1961 micro pickup so bizarre it makes golf carts look overbuilt. This thing looked like your lunchbox had a midlife crisis and decided to deliver sushi for a living. But here's the kicker, this wasn't just some goofy prototype. It was real, it hit the streets. And believe it or not, it actually inspired something even weirder. A car built specifically for kids by Nissan. That's now one of the rarest vehicles in the country. So buckle up, if your seat even fits in this thing. Because today, we're diving into the story of the Cony Guppy, the tiny truck that tried, failed, and still managed to become a legend. The year was 1961, and Japan was still rebuilding. Industries were shifting, cities were growing, and the average citizen needed something cheap, reliable, and insanely efficient to get around. But building normal cars? That was expensive, so companies got creative. And by creative, I mean wild. Engineers who once designed fighter planes were suddenly being asked to make delivery trucks for tofu. These weren't just cars, they were experiments on wheels. Japan's automotive industry had entered its microcar era, and it was glorious. Vehicles the size of bathtubs with engines barely more powerful than a leaf blower were popping up everywhere. It was the age of K-cars, tiny, boxy machines that could squeeze through alleys, run on fumes, and occasionally look like they'd been drawn by a cartoonist on a sugar high. Among this madness emerged a company called Aichi Machine Industry, known for building aircraft during the war. Like many others, they were now trying to survive by making anything that sold. Their solution? The Cony Guppy, a vehicle so small, so light, and so strange, it didn't just stand out, it practically squeaked onto the scene. And yet, for all its weirdness, the Guppy was built with serious intention. Japan didn't need big trucks. It needed compact workhorses that could carry cargo through crowded city streets and rural paths alike. The only problem? No one expected a truck that looked like a lunchbox with headlights. But the engineers weren't done. They had big dreams, and very small parts. The Cony Guppy wasn't just small, it was comically small. At just 8 feet 5 inches long and barely over 4 feet wide, this thing took the term compact and ran it straight into a vending machine. And weighing only 639 pounds, about the same as 2 sumo wrestlers after skipping lunch, it was one of the lightest pickup trucks ever built. But here's the twist, it was technically advanced, kind of. It had suicide doors, yes, like luxury cars. It had 4-wheel independent suspension, which even many modern cars don't get. And it had a torque converter, meaning you didn't even need a clutch. Just press the pedal and hope for the best. The Guppy wasn't a toy, it just looked like one. And the engine? Oh, the engine. They shoved a 199 cubic centimeters single-cylinder 2-stroke under the cargo bed. Not in front, not in back, under the bed. It made 11 horsepower. Not 11 stallions, 11 very tired ponies with asthma. But somehow, this humble lump could push the Guppy to a theoretical 50 miles per hour, which is either brave or delusional, depending on how steep the hill was. The interior? 2 seats, a steering wheel that looked like it came off a go-kart, and a dashboard with the sophistication of a rice cooker. The indicators were the size of Christmas ornaments, the brake lights were barely visible, and the whole vehicle felt like it had been built out of leftover optimism from the war recovery effort. But here's the thing, it worked. It was a real, running, drivable pickup truck, and in an era where most working-class people still used bicycles or scooters for transport, the Guppy was trying to offer them a leap into the future, even if it looked like it had been designed during a fever dream. But while it looked charming, its price tag was about to become a problem no tiny truck could carry. So here's the million-yen question, why didn't the Guppy succeed? Simple, it cost too much and did too little. In 1961, the Cony Guppy came with a price tag of 225,000 yen, roughly $625 at the time. That might sound like a bargain now, but back then, that was a serious chunk of change. The average Japanese college graduate was earning 15,000 yen a month, so to afford a Guppy, you'd basically need to sell your futon, your neighbor's futon, and possibly your internal organs. And for what? A truck so small that if you sneezed inside, you'd trigger the airbags, if it had airbags, which it didn't. Meanwhile, motorcycles and scooters were booming. They were cheaper, faster, easier to park, and, let's face it, less humiliating to be seen on. You could zip through traffic, weave through alleys, and actually carry cargo without looking like you borrowed your kid's ride-on toy. Plus, let's not ignore the elephant in the room, or in this case, the lack of room for any elephants. The Guppy's bed was so tiny that unless you were delivering tofu, socks, or eggs existential dread. It wasn't exactly a workhorse. And yet, it had heart, it had quirks. It was trying to do something different. But the market didn't care. The average buyer looked at it, looked at the price tag, then hopped on a Honda Cub and rode off into the sunset. Still, the Guppy managed to sell over 5,000 units before disappearing into microcar obscurity. And just when it seemed like the Guppy's legacy would vanish, Nissan stepped in, with a plan so strange it makes the original look normal. Just when you thought the Guppy was the weirdest vehicle to roll out of Japan's post-war imagination, enter the Datsun Baby. Yes, that's what it was called. No, it wasn't a nickname. Nissan, bless their experimental souls, took one look at the leftover parts from their partnership with Aichi Machine Industry and said, "Let's build something for the kids." And they meant that literally. In 1965, Nissan built 100 Datsun Babies exclusively for a children's theme park called Kodomo no Kuni. Translation: Land of Children Who Might Accidentally Crash into a Duck. These weren't cheap fiberglass rides bolted to a carousel. These were real, functional, gas-powered microcars. Each Datsun Baby used the same 199 cubic centimeters single-cylinder engine as the Guppy but had its power neutered to a whisper, just 7.5 horsepower, and a mechanical limiter kept speeds capped at 18.6 miles per hour. Basically, just fast enough to thrill a 10-year-old, but slow enough to keep him from doing donuts around the teacup ride. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just playtime. Nissan created a real, mini driving course where kids could learn how to steer, brake, and panic slightly when a duck wandered onto the track. It was an educational tool, disguised as a toy, powered by leftover war tech. That's either genius or insane. Maybe both. To make it kid-safe, the Datsun Baby came padded like a sumo wrestler. Thick bumpers, raised pedals, soft bodywork. It looked like a cartoon. It drove like a couch. And it felt like a fever dream in the best way. The Datsun Baby was never sold to the public, never mass-produced, and never meant to leave the park. But that didn't stop car lovers and collectors from falling in love with it decades later. Because what it lacked in horsepower, it made up for in pure, unfiltered whimsy. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a strange cult legacy that continues to this day. Today, the Cony Guppy and the Datsun Baby are more than just historical footnotes. They're legends, whispered about in collector circles like secret treasure maps. Let's be clear, either of these vehicles was a commercial hit. The Guppy was too weird and too pricey, and the Datsun Baby wasn't even for sale. But that's exactly what makes them desirable now. Only 5,000 Guppies were ever built, and most have vanished, scrapped, rusted, or quietly retired to Japanese barns. As for the Datsun Baby, just 100 units were made, and every single one was locked inside a theme park. No dealership, no resale, no chance, unless you were a 9-year-old with really good connections. That scarcity turned both into unicorns in the car world. Collectors today chase them like Indiana Jones chasing a matchbox car made of gold. If one pops up at auction, which is almost never, it doesn't go cheap. These pint-sized pickups can fetch prices that make grown men weep into their carburetors. And if you ever do see one for sale, don't hesitate. Just buy it immediately. Then frame the receipt, because you now own one of the rarest slices of automotive history. But it's not just about rarity, it's about personality. These cars weren't designed by focus groups. They were built on guts, scraps, and pure imagination. The Guppy took aircraft engineering and crammed it into a sardine can on wheels. The Datsun Baby turned kid-friendly joyrides into real-world driving lessons. In a world where everything's getting bigger, faster, louder, these two stayed small, strange, and completely unapologetic. And that's why they still matter. Because cars don't have to be perfect to be unforgettable. They just have to be bold. The Cony Guppy and Datsun Baby were never meant to be icons. They were strange, tiny experiments built in the shadow of post-war ambition. Machines that looked like punchlines but carried the spirit of innovation under their toy-like shells. And yet, they endured. Not because they were fast. Not because they were practical. But because they dared to be different. The Guppy wasn't just a micro pickup. It was a symbol of a country rebuilding, thinking small to dream big. The Datsun Baby wasn't just a kid's car. It was a lesson wrapped in laughter. A way to teach the next generation not just how to drive, but how to imagine. In a world filled with SUVs the size of houses and cars that all look the same, the Guppy and the Baby stand out as reminders that charm matters, that weirdness is a virtue, and that even the tiniest ideas can leave a massive impact. They weren't perfect, they weren't polished, but they were pure. So the next time someone tells you a car needs 800 horsepower and 12 touchscreens to be cool, just smile and whisper one word: Guppy.